How about the Georgia Bulldogs? Coming off their second national title in 2 years, they are going to make a go at a three-peat. Okay, Kirby Smart is very much so putting his pedal to the metal here. As soon as that confetti dropped, he made a round around the stadium to the Georgia faithful and went one, I would imagine signifying one national title. He went two for the national title they had just won. And then, would you know it, he put up a third finger. Is he calling his shot? Felt like it to me. Got asked in the post-game press conference where Nick Brake and I were actually sitting after the game. Someone said, have you already thought about a three-peat? Is that on your mind? Can you win a third in a row? And he just said, it's going to be more difficult to win a third in a row than it was to win the first or the second. So they've got a target on their back. Everyone is coming after Georgia, but like Kirby Smart says, we will not be hunted at the University of Georgia. So what are some questions? What are some things that we need to preview as we get ready for spring ball to get on and rolling? I think the most obvious one is the quarterback race paired with a new OC in Mike Bobo. Now, Mike Bobo was hired with the departure of Todd Monken to the NFL, and that was met with some opposition from the fan base from the success that he didn't have at other locations and different issues you maybe had with him when he was previously the OC at Georgia. But the big takeaway for me with Mike Bobo being named the OC is he specializes in quarterbacks. He's the quarterback whisperer. He coached Aaron Murray when he set all the records for the Southeastern Conference. So you're in good hands in terms of who you would want overseeing your quarterback race. If it's not Todd Monken, Mike Bobo is not a bad second. Also the continuity and culture there. But you look at this race, you got Gunnar Stockton, Carson Beck, Brock Vandagriff. Now, I believe that Carson Beck will end up winning this thing, just based on the fact that he's been there the longest, what we saw from him in the national title game in garbage time. The kid can sling it. Big frame, kind of prototypical professional passer profile. How's that for an alliteration? I like Carson Beck. I think he's going to have enough to win this job. But if he doesn't win the job, if it is someone like Gunnar Stockton or Brock Vandagriff, I think then it's a factor of, okay, the mobility element to our quarterback. We want to have that in the offense. We want to have that, or maybe we need that going forward. So I'm calling my shot. I think it's Carson Beck, but this quarterback race as a whole will be paramount. Because think about it this way. There used to be the question of, well, can Georgia win one with Stetson Bennett? Yeah, they got all this talent around him. Generational defense, that's awesome, but got JT Daniels on the bench. Is Stetson Bennett going to be good enough to win a national title? Fast forward 2 national titles later, and we're asking the question, man, can Georgia win one without Stetson Bennett? Can they do it without 13? One of the greatest to ever come through Athens. So it's funny how the script changes like that, but that is the test for Kirby Smart and company. They haven't done it yet without Stetson Bennett. And whoever ends up pulling the trigger for them at quarterback will have a lot of pressure on their shoulders. They'll also have quite a few weapons around them. Namely, Oscar Delp, Brock Bowers, Dominique Lovett, a lot of weapons in Athens, Georgia. But if you have not yet subscribed, we'd love to have you a part of this. Shout out to everybody watching live. We appreciate y'all. Also, if you have not yet followed me on Instagram or on Twitter, at Jody Piquel, follow me there. We have a lot of conversations there that we then incorporate into this show, the People Show. So we appreciate you in advance for that. Here's the other thing that I am wanting to take a closer look at as we get into spring football. How much did we talk about heading into the national title game? Even before that, during the regular season and the college football playoff, how much Georgia went 12 personnel, meaning they had 2 tight ends on the field at a time with Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington. Darnell Washington has gone to the league, going to make himself a whole lot of money. Now, who's going to step into his place but a young Oscar Delp, who was also very heavily recruited and had a lot of stars next to his name when he got to Athens, Georgia. But the difference for me is Georgia going into the year, or rather going into different games, was able to game plan with 12 personnel and not have to sacrifice size for speed. Like, you could have Darnell Washington on the field, and I believe he's somewhere, don't quote me on this, I think he's somewhere in the range of a 4.7 40, which for a man who's 6'7", 270 pounds, that means something. Nick, pull up this video, or excuse me, rather this picture that we took with him from National Title Media Day. Dude's enormous. I mean, just look. I mean, he is towering over me. We did the interview, and my head was just tilted up the entire time, trying to make some sort of resemblance with eye contact. But that is a big human being. That is the equivalent of an offensive tackle that you are now no longer going to have on the field, who's also a threat to catch passes for you. Now you have Oscar Delp, who's 6'5", 225 pounds, who can also catch the football, and maybe that's the thought. You potentially would sacrifice some size, but maybe you add a little bit more speed. Maybe you add someone in Oscar Delp who can be a better receiving threat for you. So we'll see how that develops, but I'm just curious to see how Georgia looks offensively in that spring football game. It'll be very vanilla, it'll be very basic, but maybe we just get a temperature for how the offense could look different with Oscar Delp as opposed to Darnell Washington. Now I'll say this, I don't think Georgia's going to be any less physical when it comes to running the football. Okay, they are still going to be who they are. They're going to get downhill. They're going to be run it right at you. Oscar Delp, if you can't get that block for us, and I believe he can, but if he can't, we're going to get somebody on the field who can. Again, check out Darnell Washington, man. He's enormous. He is a refrigerator of a human being. He's no longer going to be on the field blocking for you. Oscar Delp, a bit smaller, a bit slimmer. He's going to develop a lot physically, I'm sure, over the course of another offseason with Georgia. But still, 6'7", 270, you can't replace that at tight end. What does it look like offensively for them? What do they look like as a 12 personnel? It'll be different. Doesn't mean it'll be worse, but it'll be different. So I'm curious to see what that looks like. Now, this is potentially one of the more important questions I have, and I don't have a doubt here. I just have a question, a legitimate question. Who picks up the alpha male label for Georgia on defense? Because here's who you lose. You lose Chris Smith, the all-everything DB for you. You lose Nolan Smith. You lose Jalen Carter, all to the NFL. All three of those dudes are tone setters for the defense. And talent will never be an issue at Georgia as long as Kirby Smart is running your program. Will never be an issue. You will have some of the best ingredients in college football. But what's made Georgia so special, what's differentiated them and got them over the hump and allowed them to be back-to-back national champions is their culture, their structure. And great cultures are player-led. Who is going to be the player that now leads this defense? Because there is now a vacancy, rather an opportunity for someone to step into that role. Is it Javon Bullard? Is it Small Munden? We'll see. I'm curious to see. I'm not saying there weren't still great leaders and great players on that defense. I'm just curious to see who ends up being the bell cow for you, because you got to have it to win a national title. Georgia's going to show up and be better than just about every team they play. Tennessee, we'll see what they bring to the table. But they're going to be, at least from a personnel standpoint, favored in every single game. Do they have the culture and the structure to keep them on their A game, to be as close to the best version of Georgia as possible every single Saturday? Because that's why teams get upset. The variance of 18 to 22-year-olds. It's hard to show up and be the same version of yourself every Saturday, and that's when you get upset, when you don't bring your best self to the office. So for Georgia, that leadership component on defense especially is going to be important. Personnel and talent's not the issue. Who's going to step in and be that alpha male, be that bell cow for the Georgia defense? So that, paired with the quarterback race with Mike Bobo and how that looks, and then seeing what 12 personnel looks like for Georgia with Oscar Delp replacing Darnell Washington, Georgia has everything they need to win a third national title. Can they mesh together? Can they put all these things cohesively together throughout the span of 12-plus games to put themselves in position to hoist another national title in Houston? I'm excited to see it, but it all starts in the spring. If you have not yet got a membership, though, to Dogs HQ, they are going to be covering this thing like an Atlanta Hawk, pun intended, and there's going to be a lot of good intel on those message boards and a lot of great stories that are premium content, okay? So if you want to have a real-time update with Georgia football throughout spring practice and beyond, get a membership at Dogs HQ, our Georgia On 3 site. Also, make sure you're subscribed here because we'll have a lot of intel as well on the show. But if you want it real time, those guys are at practice, watching it, talking it through, and are as close to that thing as possible. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count.
Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.